This happened. The Kremlin's playbooks have broken down. Propaganda is no longer coping. And the mouthpieces of the Federation's bloody leader can no longer distort the truth, discussing it as successful success. So the bunker rat crawled out of his hole to personally calm the Russians. He says everything is stable, the economy is working, there is no inflation, everything is under control.
We increase the economic and technological potential of the regions, which means that we serve the tasks of spatial development of Russia with its vast territory.
Control? It's laughter through tears. Russia is rolling to the bottom, and even he feels it. Because the only thing that is stable in Russia is rising prices. Businesses are steadily closing, salaries are steadily being delayed, even at defense factories. Meanwhile, this week, Putin stepped onto the stage to calm the Russians. He can see that propaganda is no longer working, so he took it upon himself to convince the obedient herd of slaves that everything is fine. And right after him, his official mouthpiece, Peskov.
The stability of the Russian economy is absolutely ensured. The state is able to fulfill all social obligations and also form the agenda of economic development, despite the existing certain difficulties, from which no one is immune.
But no matter how hard they try, dissolving into verbal diarrhea, we see that Russia is rolling to the bottom. The whole world sees it. And moreover, even his own citizens not only feel it, but no longer hide it. Ready to see what stability Putin style really looks like?
Nowadays, 1,000 rubles are not enough to make a Greek salad. I have 900 rubles on my card. That's all I could buy. All cheese, tomatoes, cucumbers, and pepper. I'm just shocked. Prices, what is happening? I leave the store and almost cry. What am I paying for 1,000? I'm standing at the checkout because I have 900 rubles. This is a large amount for going to the store for Greek salad. I don't have enough to buy all the products for a Greek salad. I was standing, removing the onions, removing the olives, and I wanted another chocolate bar for 29 rubles. 1,000 rubles!
And now, once again, while Russians whine and complain about impoverishment and worthless survival, Vladimir Putin pompously declares the economy is stable, enterprises are opening, inflation is low, there is no reason to panic, that everything is good. Just don't look at the prices, don't look at the utility bills, don't look at the closed businesses, and the most important, don't listen to your own refrigerators. Because if you listen to Putin, right now Russia is experiencing an economic miracle. But what is actually happening when the official picture looks like confident and almost optimistic, but the economy is not a speech? The economy is a receipt, it's a salary, it's a utility bill. And here a different reality begins.
Закриваються. Малий і середній бізнес масово скорочується. Кафе і ресторани вже не витримують витрат. І попри заяви Кремля про стабільність і зниження ключової ставки...
Experts are sounding the alarm. Russia's economy at the beginning of spring looks extremely unstable, and a new default is already looming on the horizon.
When you watch TV, the most important thing is to go to the store less often.
Therefore, I am inclined to believe that by the end of this year the ruble should, well, be somewhere between 140, 150. If the current government remains.
If the hand remains. If the hand does not dry out, if it is not sawed off.
Well, unfortunately, the situation in the economy, in the socio-economic sense in general, continues to deteriorate. We are heading for a full-fledged recession in many sectors, especially industrial and other sectors of the real sector of the economy. A full-fledged recession has already begun. A reduction in output by tens of %. A reduction in the working week. There is a 4-day week, somewhere a 3-day week. Reports of enterprises for the 25th year are now coming. Many are generating losses.
And now the main thing, even at defense enterprises, salary delays, the very same enterprises that the Kremlin calls the heart of the war. But if the heart does not receive funding on time, this is no longer stability. This is a symptom. And this is not being said by Ukrainian sources. This is being said by Russians themselves, in their regional chat on social media, in candid confessions out of despair.
I'm going to say something for which I can be banned in Russia, but someone has to say it out loud. Everyone has already discussed how we raise VAT, how prices rise with this. But why is no one saying that we are being forced to sponsor a war with which we do not agree? Well, I mean, do you really think that this tax increase will be used to improve our yards? Or maybe to improve the level of education or health care? Have you seen what salaries are promised to contract soldiers? I don't think that our government sold all its mansions, apartments, cars. And to whom should they be sold, if only to each other? How? It's so good that they have us, isn't it? It's not the mammoth that is bad, it will not die out badly.
You know, I look at all this and a question arises. If everything is stable, why does Putin personally go out to calm the population? Where are the propagandists? Where are their usual victorious broadcasts? And it's simple. It seems that television anesthesia no longer works.
I observe what is happening at the front. And first of all, it is not happening in terms of taking or not taking Kupiansk. What are they turning our people? These are the fighters, as they are called. And so Andrei sent me, did not give permission, and I do not want to set him up. His name is Andrei, and so I will read what he writes a little. He is a contract soldier, but on mobilization. He was mobilized, signed a contract. He cannot be fired in any way. Yes, and so he turns to me. His father died, his mother was alone, his brother died, but, he emphasizes, not in the special military operation. Our contract is extended. They are mobilized. When they are demobilized, it means what to expect there and so on. And asks for help. Here he turns to me, how can I help? And therefore, the cessation of this war will first help people demobilize. After all, it's like a concentration camp. So they took it away and do not let me out. And he writes directly that these assaults are all, that's what he calls them, indiscriminate. This is the only thing that leads to mass destruction. This soldier writes to me. Then I listened, the platoon commander turned to his mothers, to his parents. Help us stop this carnage. These are also consequences. And this is the violence that is demonstrated on the battlefield, which here expands the enmity between the Ukrainians and our Russians, and this violence penetrates inside. Well, the third time he will be imprisoned, he was sent a contract for murder there from Yakusha, too, so. He will be imprisoned. They even gave him 20 years for the brutal murders of his fellow villagers, well, relatives, his sister, I think, and so on. He signs a contract again, goes again, fights, was wounded there, and he was taken there again. Then, he was wounded. He returns, then goes to kill several people. And now they are already writing, there is the widow of a murdered man, there she writes that, well, how many times now, he says, he will kill, go and serve again. This is cruelty. I will say it again. I say this lack of spirituality, cruelty, it dwells and lives among us, and we already feel it and will continue to feel it. Moreover, this injustice will begin there.
And when the leader of an authoritarian country begins to personally explain that everything is normal, this means that tension is accumulating inside the system. And if persuasion is required, it means that people no longer believe automatically. Because inflation is not just a number, it is a loss of trust. Salary delays are not just accounting, they are a social risk. And social instability is the main fear of any autocracy, and of Putin's too. Because Russian regions are forced to cut recently adopted budgets. For example, the authorities of Primorsky Krai this week cut the region's budget for 2026 by 3 billion rubles at once. At the same time, the budget was adopted only 3 months ago, but during this time, the situation in the economy has significantly worsened. According to the head of the regional government, ARE they no longer have funds to cover the deficit as they did before.
So, as a rule, every year, we have carryover budget balances of about 8 to 10 billion rubles. This year, on the 1st of January, this did not happen to us. We do not have target carryovers, there are only 500,000 rubles for the entire region. And so, of course, we have to reduce this deficit because there is nothing to cover it. And if you remember, in all previous years we covered the deficit at the expense of the carryover balances of budget funds. Therefore, we propose to reduce 3 1/10 of the billion rubles of the budget.
The education sector suffered the most because as much as 809 million rubles were cut, which had been planned for equipping schools, repairing children's camps, technical schools and colleges. Spending was also reduced on the social sphere, culture, physical education, tourism, agriculture and emergency response. Because all this money in the form of drones and missiles flew to bomb Ukrainian cities, villages and thermal power stations. So no more development of Primorsky Krai, only war, which is taking place on the other side of the earth.
Over the past 4 years, we have been rapidly degrading in this sense and moving to the world's backyard. You need to have the courage to say this honestly. I proceed from 3 positions. This is the situation in Russian science, the situation in Russian education, and the situation with modern technologies and ways of their application. In all 3 areas I have listed, the situation is terrible. Scientific research in many ways, to a certain extent, if not banned, then extremely much complicated by all sorts of senile prohibitions, an unspoken ban on the study of so-called unfriendly countries. And if we take the humanitarian layer of science, then, generally speaking, this is 80% of our humanities. I am silent about the situation in our aviation industry. Only recently there was news that one airline canceled an entire network of routes due to a Boeing breakdown. And this is no longer a one-time, not a coincidence, not an accident. This is already a system. Because aircraft must be serviced somewhere. Because, despite all the gray imports, there are still big problems. And let's be honest, the sanctions are now in the 4th, soon the 5th year of the war. They have taken effect. They have worked. Don't hide it, you don't have to hide behind it and say that we don't care. No, we care. Sanctions are working, and the Russian economy is now feeling it. I am not even talking about the absolutely absurd situation with the recycling fee for cars imported from abroad, because, of course, this cannot be called anything but insanity. I understand that there is a desire of the state to provide jobs for a couple of million people who collect the Russian auto industry. But excuse me, but why do we have to pay all for this?
And what we see now in Russia is not an economic triumph. It is an attempt to hold up the facade. But it's not working, because the budget deficit is hitting the social sphere.
It got worse. This was stated by the Minister of Economic Development, Maxim Reshetnikov. He also stressed that there are simply no quick prospects for economic recovery now. The largest state-owned companies, Rosneft and Gazprom, record serious losses in the amount of 23 trillion rubles. This is almost a quarter of the country's GDP. It is becoming increasingly difficult for the state to take money from corporations. This means that the burden is transferred to citizens due to the increase in taxes, utility bills, and food prices. Everyone felt it, and in the fall, VAT will soar to as much as 30%. And the recent formal increase in salaries by 10,000 does not save here, because inflation burns all 15,000 wages.
You see, Russia is rolling to the bottom. At this time, Putin is trying to prop up the facade with words about stability. This means only one thing: the structure inside is already cracking, and the louder everything is stable sounds, the more carefully one should look at the numbers, because the economy is a stubborn thing, and it doesn't listen to the television.
Unfortunately, the economy of the Russian Federation, as we predicted, is going on with a fierce crash. Our budget revenues are falling terribly. The SMO has entered such a dangerous phase for us. It has been going on for 4 years, even on the calendar. And I understand why the Americans now look at us with disdain, why they do not reckon with us. They no longer perceive our nuclear hints. Yes, they also see gigantic failures of this system, both in the military and in the state organizational part. The Russian leadership itself brings down its authority and reputation in the eyes of some kind of force that can be dealt with, in the eyes of probably not only the United States, the Trumpist leadership, but also in the eyes of all other countries and other tops. Well, in general, what can we say to our powers that be? Well, we arrived. It's already the end of an era, that war is moving to the end of an era. Now a terrible economic crisis is gaining momentum in the Russian Federation. Already the news about the capture of some village in the Zaporozhye direction, yes, from the front, no longer seems important. What is important is something else. Our budget revenues are falling terribly. The Russian budget deficit in January preliminarily amounted to 1.7 trillion rubles. Revenues and budget revenues are falling. Revenues, according to the forecasts of the Ministry of Finance, will be 11.6% less than in January 2025. Here, that is, this is 200. The deficit turned out to be 252 billion rubles more at the end of January than in the same month of 2025. In general, the total volume of budget revenues for the month amounted to 2.3 trillion rubles in January, 2.3 trillion rubles, which, as I have already mentioned, is 11.6% less than it was. Look at the statistics on how industries are falling. A third of our enterprises are already unprofitable. This is how, as they say, transportation on Russian railways and so on and so forth is falling. The result of the Minsk agreement cannot be presented even as a victory, even propagandistically. And this can cause a very dangerous split in the ruling elite. In general, the situation is becoming quite nasty and tense, my friends.
And you and I do not lose faith in victory and Ukraine and continue to live and fight. And Russians continue to whine, to complain about the consequences of their own silent consent. But slaves have neither a voice nor a choice. And I will keep talking about this as long as Russian missiles fly at our cities. Thank you for watching and for your feedback. Take care of yourself, take care of Ukraine. See you in the next episode.